This is episode 123 of That Shakespeare Life.
Hi, I'm Mathew Morris from the University of Leicester. Another great method for studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
William Shakespeare immortalized Richard III as an ugly hunchback who is rudely stamped, deformed, unfinished, and cannot strut before a wanton ambling nymph. Those descriptions being quotes from Shakespeare's play titled Richard III. In doing so, Shakespeare encapsulated the Tudor opinion of Richard III and that of Shakespeare's 16th century theater audience who loved to hear stories of the defeat of the House of Plantagenet by the House of Tudor. Shakespeare based his tales of Richard III, including sinister and evil acts, along with his bloody death at the Battle of Bosworth, on a mix of actual history, Holinshed's chronicles, and a great deal of personal creative license. One of the most enduring images Shakespeare uses of Richard III was that of a twisted spine to accompany Richard's ugly, twisted character. History scholars have long debated the source of this twisted spine. Was it scoliosis or maybe a hunchback? Without the actual body of Richard III, whose shallow grave was long lost to history centuries ago, scholars have used texts like Shakespeare to try and find evidence for the truth about what actually happened to Richard III. For one team of archaeologists, however, it was not enough to leave the sinister Richard III lost to history with more questions than answers. So in 2012, in conjunction with the Richard III Society, a team of ambitious archaeologists led by Mathew Morris at the University of Leicester Archaeological Services, working with the Leicester City Council, mounted an extraordinary effort to locate the final resting place of Richard III and discover the truth about his body, his death, and his grave. Remarkably, Mathew and his team did locate Richard III's body, and on the very first day of their project. Mathew Morris joins us today to share about this historical find, the truth about Richard III's twisted spine, and explain what one of the most notorious kings of England was doing buried beneath a car park. Mathew has worked for University of Leicester Archaeological Services since 2004, excavating a wide range of rural and urban archaeology across the Midlands from the prehistoric period through to the Industrial Revolution. He graduated from the University of Leicester in 2003 with a BA in archaeology and an MA in landscape studies. His interests include urban archaeology, community archaeology, and Roman and medieval archaeology. Notable projects include the High Cross Leicester retail development, a massive multi-period urban excavation investigating the northeast quarter of the Roman and medieval town, the Western Road Roman Cemetery in Leicester, work on Leicester and Oakham castles, and Leicester Greyfriars, as well as the first excavated section of the Lower Inknield Way at Aston Clinton in Buckinghamshire. In 2012, he supervised the successful archaeological search for the lost grave of King Richard III. He has co-authored 3 popular books on Leicestershire archaeology, Visions of Ancient Leicester, Richard III, The King Under the Car Park, and Life in the Roman World, Roman Leicester. Hello, Mathew. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Cassidy. Thanks for inviting me.
2 references contemporary to the life of William Shakespeare, one by Christopher Wren the Elder in 1612, and then John Speed in 1611, both call attention to Richard's death, but they seem to be confusing. Wren writes that a monument was erected to Richard III that would have potentially been visible to William Shakespeare unless it was torn down before then with the demolition of the friary. And then there's a rumor I came across that Henry VII placed a marble monument in the 15th century that could have also still been there for Shakespeare's lifetime, but then John Speed indicates the bones of Richard III were thrown into a river, which seems to have been given at least some credibility because 19th century historians erected plaques by this exact river as the site of Richard's last known remains, and even performed archaeological excavations there trying to find Richard's bones. Mathew, based on the historical records, what did Shakespeare likely believe had happened to Richard III as he wrote this play?
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, isn't there? And actually, before you asked, I'd never even thought about it in terms of Shakespeare being alive still at this particular point. which made me have to go back and check a couple of things, which is really interesting. So we don't actually know if Shakespeare ever visited Leicester. We know the King's Men played in Leicester in 1606, but that's long after the play was written. And we don't know if Shakespeare was still there with them at that point in traveling in Leicester.
Excited to see more? Subscribe today at cassidycash.com/experience to watch this entire interview, bonus archaeological footage, and documentaries, and more, all about the life of William Shakespeare. I'll see you inside.